I think hybrid work has impacted everyone across the globe. In our organization, we have a what we call a federated structure. So I'm with a corporate office, but all our business units they can decide for themselves in terms of what kind of work arrangement they want. So for us, the bank actually, in fact, have asked everyone, all of their employees, to return to office 5 days a week. So we're able to see the impact of hybrid. That's for the rest of the organization, and also 100% RTO. So you're right in terms of this is still experimental. So we're watching that closely, and we're looking at the impact in terms of employee engagement, talent attraction. For example, are we going to be able to hire talents if we ask everyone to come back to office 100%? Are we going to retain people if if we say we will discontinue the hybrid work? So that's what we're doing right now. But in terms of ensuring, in terms of the benefit, one of the unique benefits that I see right now of hybrid work and allowing people to work remotely is that we now have access to talents all over the world. So because before, when we ask people to report to office or to Manila, they have to come here. But now we hire people, for example, who are in Spain or in Singapore, but they're working with us here in Manila. So that is made possible because of remote work.
Welcome and good day. Today we have a special treat for you. It's season 13 of Leaders Edge, episode 3. Our guest today is Ruby Jaucian, and she has an extensive experience in the HR sphere or domain. I don't want to talk too much about her. I'll let her talk about that. Okay. So, with that, let's go ahead and let's go with Ruby.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for introducing me and for inviting me again in Leader's Edge. I'm so excited to be with you this afternoon and talk about our topic, which is very exciting. So, as you said, I've had many years in HR, the HR practice as an HR leader and an HR business partner for more than 17 years. But now I'm involved in the transformation, in business transformation. So I'm very much eager to talk about the work of the future. How are we going to move forward in terms of the ways of working, such as hybrid work arrangements?
I'm glad you're talking about this. I mean, I work in a hybrid team at the moment. And even when the pandemic started, I was thrown right away into a hybrid group. And it was a little difficult, I'll admit that.
Mhm.
Uh, and maybe the best place to start would be engagement. Okay, how does a hybrid workplace model impact employee engagement?
Employee engagement has been discussed many times, especially now that we are in a hybrid work mode. The first thing that we realize in terms of work is that work is not a place. It's really what we do. So there should be a shift in our perspective in terms of how people are working, because traditionally work has been associated on our physical location, where we are, or how much time we spend at work. However, with the rise of hybrid work, this notion is already evolving. So we should embrace this and ensure that organizations are able to unlock the potential for greater flexibility and adaptability. So there are many studies around hybrid work and how it's impacted employee engagement. In fact, Gartner, in one of their studies, they said 48% of employees that they have surveyed said they're more productive and they're more motivated and engaged because they are given flexibility to choose their work location. Another study by Harvard Business Review said 77% of employees actually said they're more productive at work when they're working remotely. So this is the same when we conducted these surveys in our own organization. So the results are in parallel to this study. So in terms of engagement, higher engagement, in fact, I heard of a company that required everyone, mandated everyone to return to office, and they had a bit of fallout in terms of employees who really prefer to work more flexibly.
Actually, engagement for me is an unusual word because we started measuring engagement, I think, what, 20 years ago?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and before the pandemic, the results always seem to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
30% of my staff is engaged. That's it. But at the same time, companies were succeeding. I wasn't seeing a 70% failure in companies. Okay. So I say, so there's something that isn't right here. Okay. I know engagement is important. And the recent events are showing a different, maybe score when it comes to engagement. It shows a marked increase in engagement. And I think because I wrote an article in LinkedIn when the pandemic started, and this is also relative to the next question. Uh, and I was saying one of the biggest shifts an organization has to make are its values. Okay, because I used to train leadership and all of that, and I would say, look, just align yourselves with the company values and everything will be fine, which was a
Mm-hmm.
fairly easy thing to do. But then I wrote, with not today, I think the company has to figure out a way how to align with the person's values, not just the company itself. So, relative to that, the next question: how can organizations maintain their company culture and foster employee engagement as well? What steps can the organization take to effectively communicate and align these goals?
Yeah. So very good question, which has been in many HR circles, organizations. This is a like a favorite topic right now. So maintaining a strong company culture, I think, is should be very intentional, especially now that we are, working in different locations. Some are working in the office, some are working at home, or they can be away, right? So in our
Mhm.
company, people can work anywhere, so, but we also ensure that we have meetings or we have activities wherein we're face to face because that's already allowed now. So it's very important that people understand that. We're very big on purpose. So the purpose of the company, regardless when it was hybrid or when it was fully face to face before, we're very big on purpose. So people can actually relate to that. We have last year, since last year, we have been talking about massive transformative purpose of the company and each individual. But what I find very interesting is that people know because they latch on this purpose, which is very important to them personally and to the organization. They're able to live it whether they are at home or in the office. But we are very intentional in terms of establishing how we will communicate from the CEO to the CEOs of each of the business unit, and what the roles of middle managers are also very important to us. So we're very intentional in terms of what behaviors should we have, whether regardless of our location. So I think culture is very, very important in ensuring that there is still employee connections or human connections within the group.
Can you expound a little on the intentionality, if you want to say, of purpose? When I talk about leadership, I say one thing that most companies don't seem to have is they don't seem to have a process for leadership. It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's not set up like here your KPIs kind of thing, and it's not an intentional thing. They just say, okay, Paul, you're promoted, and they assume that I'm a leader because I look like one.
So to us,
Yeah.
even before, so regardless of if it's hybrid or remote
Uh,
work or in the office, so purpose is very important. It has long been established because the Boytis Group is a 100-year-old company,
mhm.
so it has stand the test of time, and we say that we're together for the long haul.
Okay.
So we anchor, all of us are anchored on the values and the purpose. So that's very foundational. And then now we are in the transformation. Okay, so we have what we call the GT 2025 or Great Transformation, and with that we said to be successful in this transformation, leaders have to um, manifest or demonstrate behaviors that are aligned to the transformation. What would make us um, what would leapfrog our company from before, from the current to a transformed company. So we said we have to be innovative, we have to have synergies, we have to ensure that, we are entrepreneurial, we have to have fun. So those behaviors are actually articulated. And in fact, right now we're going to do an assessment of all of our senior leaders, and then from this assessment, they we will know, for example, for each leader, they will know which ones are their areas for improvement in terms of these behaviors, and this will be included in the leadership development plan. So that way we really are very intentional on how leadership should contribute to our organization's transformation.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that because many of the companies that I've worked with, it's not quite there. All right. There's no, let's say, structure for leadership. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not there. Okay. So, but I'm happy to hear that. And talking about the middle managers, because for me, of late, especially with the COVID situation, the middle managers are greatly affected. Okay. The pressures seem to have multiplied, okay, over the process. And maybe some of them were even terminated. Okay. And so they were stuck with, and so when you talk about the managers, middle managers, what suggestions can you give them to effectively lead hybrid teams?
Okay. We have what we call middle out strategy, which we emphasize the importance of the role of the middle managers, because they are the ones who really ensure that the teams are engaged, and they, of course, they're doing their operations, their daily operations. So I agree with you that they're pulled at all directions. So we have to give them support as well. So in terms of doing this, we really conduct a lot of training for our middle managers, especially, for example, when we were 100% remote during the pandemic. So there was a lot of adjustment for them as well. But actually, before the pandemic, we were already partially hybrid. So once or twice a week, you can already work from home. So the adjustment was not that big for them. But because of the period, we thought that we will be back to our usual work arrangement after maybe a month or two, which was extended to 3 years. Because of that, we had to really give them tools, for example, on how to manage their the hybrid work effectively. So we also have given them reminders on what to do. For example, you should regularly check in with your remote employees and ensure that, even if you're not seeing each other face to face, you're looking at the KPIs. You set the right goals, you look at the KPIs, you check on the progress. So little things, even the virtual team building or virtual kumustahan or virtual beer drinking, so socialization. So even all of that were turned online. So even our engagement activities, trivia night, etc., recognition nights. It was all done virtually. So, but we keep on emphasizing to the managers that they should not discontinue the ongoing conversations with their teams because that's very important. So we said, you can do micro communication. So, for example, they have established Viber groups so that in the morning they can say to each other, even if they don't see each other in the office, they can say good morning to one another through Viber or hello, hi, who's sick? And if someone's sick or has gotten COVID, they would send their regards, and they will talk about how to take care of themselves, etc., and how to help each other and how to share the workload. So I think that is very, very important. But just like before, it's very important that continuous learning for our managers is given. So, for example, they have access to LinkedIn Learning. So it's an unlimited number of courses. There's too many courses in LinkedIn Learning, and they can. It's an on-demand training that they can access anytime. So that they can get tips, for example, on how to engage your team members, how to balance between remote workers and also on-site workers. So those are the things that we do for our managers.
Managers, especially, for me, they're under a lot of what I call tension. Because when you look at their positions, there's the management aspect and there's the leadership aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, we're still in the era we don't measure leadership, we measure management. We measure the money at the end of the quarter. You don't say, "Hey, how engaging were you?" I said, "No, we don't. Just show me the money." so, so that's one of the tensions the middle managers go through. How are you helping them deal with that?
Actually, in our organization, we do 360. So, in terms of 360, because we think that feedback is a gift. So,
Right.
our CEO is very people focused. In fact, he calls himself Chief Engagement Officer. So, in terms of people and culture, he's really the role model for us all. So, one of the things that we do is we provide assessments for everyone, actually, for our leaders in the group, including our managers. So one of the most common one is our 360. So that they will get feedback from different perspectives. So that's very important. And that one is, so we take that seriously. So that one is included in their individual development plans.
Okay, excellent. That's good to hear. There are some 360 plans that I've worked with that were, I think, premature. The company
Mm-hmm.
wasn't ready for it, and it just pushed everything back. Okay, but
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges we're all facing is this is all new to us. Okay, if I say I'm an expert in hybrid, it's just because I have 3 months more experience than you. Okay, it's not that I've got years and years of this. We all started what pretty much 2 years ago, if you want to say. Some of us started before that, but the big shift really happened about 2 years ago. So much of what's happening is, I would say, it's very experimental still. Okay, it's
Yes,
not
I
the change.
agree.
And how do you see outside challenges? When I say outside challenges to the hybrid, if you look at bigger companies abroad, some of the bosses are forcing back to work. Okay, and these are not small companies. They were companies that used to be admired as maybe the best place to work in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now the boss is saying everybody come back to work. This is an hypothesis. Let's say they do succeed. You think that will affect the way you see things?
I think hybrid work has impacted everyone across the globe. In our organization, we have a what we call a federated structure. So I'm with a corporate office, but all our business units they can decide for themselves in terms of what kind of work arrangement they want. So for us, the bank actually, in fact, have asked everyone, all of their employees, to return to office 5 days a week. So we're able to see the impact of hybrid. That's for the rest of the organization, and also 100% RTO. So you're right in terms of this is still experimental. So we're watching that closely. and we're looking at the impact in terms of employee engagement, talent attraction. For example, are we going to be able to hire talents if we ask everyone to come back to office 100%? Are we going to retain people if if we say we will discontinue the hybrid work? So that's what we're doing right now. But in terms of ensuring, in terms of the benefit, one of the unique benefits that I see right now of hybrid work and allowing people to work remotely is that we now have access to talents all over the world. So because before, when we ask people to report to office or to Manila, they have to come here. But now we hire people, for example, who are in Spain or in Singapore, but they're working with us here in Manila. So that is made possible because of remote work.
That's I find that rather exciting. Okay, that it
Mhm.
expanded it that way. Uh, Going into the future, what do you think are some challenges hybrid work might face, or maybe some drawbacks of the whole system or the whole process?
I think there's still a threat in terms of not being able to establish human connections. Um, in terms of innovation, there are also studies that say when you're innovating or transforming a company, when you're doing creative work, it's better to be together face to face rather than virtually. But I think people are also adapting. So for me, for example, I just came from a 12-week sprint. We did ideation, problem identification, ideation, and then solutioning, and we did it remotely. So we had a coach who's in the UK, and we had another team member who's in Thailand, and three of us in Manila. But we were able to do the entire process. But I think we should still be, as leaders, we should still be intentional in terms of ensuring that people connect to each other. They have genuine conversations. They're very honest to each other. There's transparency. Um, and there's trust. I think trust is very, very important because you don't see the person and you just wanna you in because before you can see the person physically and you can observe them working in the office. Now you have to trust that even though you don't see them, they are working and they can provide the outcomes.
You know, the concept of trust. Maybe this is just me thinking. If you look at your stronger teams or the better performing teams, maybe if you watch how they're performing in a hybrid situation, see what they're doing. Why? Because when you look at strong teams, they really trust each other. Okay, if they're working and they're gelling well together, they might not be of the. Because I came from one, we were a small unit of three. We were of three different generations. You know, I've been married for 30 years. The other one just got married, and the other person technically is not married, was with a partner. I have four kids. He has one kid. She has no kids. You know, different generations, and we're scattered over the city. But of course, in those days, we reported to the office. But we were a really strong team in the sense that, I could rely on you to do things if I asked you. If you couldn't do it, you'd say no, no problem. And sometimes it would get a little rough if you want to say, but more like a best friend situation. You know, best friends, you can insult in their face; they don't mind.
That's right.
Right? But we were at that level, and unfortunately, the COVID thing, kind of broke up the organization in different ways. So I couldn't really see what happened. But what I'm thinking is maybe you should observe those teams and how what they're doing differently, or is the trust still there? But
Mhm.
of course, they have the advantage of having established their how do you call their working relationships before COVID, not during COVID. So that in itself is quite interesting to look at.
That's right.
Other
Because
yeah.
yeah,
No, go ahead.
in a Google study, they studied different teams, hundreds of teams in Google. They found out the highest performing teams are actually those that has a psychological safety,
Mhm.
so which is rooted on trust. So I think that's very, very important. What you said, for example, you can argue, you can have heated
Yeah,
arguments, but at the end of the day, you know that you got each other's back. So Google said that's the one of the most important attribute of a high performing team.
absolutely. And I'd like to see if these can be replicated in a hybrid from the beginning, not they were a high performing team and then now they're in hybrid because that the relationship's already there. But
Mm,
can you build such a team in a hybrid organization?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Uh,
so I get
yes.
I get what you mean because we had what we call pandemic hires.
Yeah.
So they started during the pandemic and we've never seen them face to face.
Mhm.
So now that we're back in the office, we can go to the office freely anytime we want. We really ensure that the pandemic hires, we meet them face to face so that we are able to establish that relationship and trust because that's very important. So I think it's a matter of also setting the right expectations that in our company, it's really hybrid. You cannot expect, there are very few roles which is 100% remote. Even those who are based in Singapore, for example, they fly to Manila because there are important meetings or
Of course.
events that we need to do face to face. So that expectation is known by everyone, which is very, very important.
Well, at least you have some kind of beginning point because my
Mm,
youngest daughter was hired during the she's remotely hired, everything remote. Okay, and now she's required to go to the office every now and then. But those are very, how would I say, unique cases, unless another pandemic happens. Okay, but hopefully not. Uh, but at least you have some kind of something to study, or at least some data to gather that you can make much better decisions. Okay, there are a lot of things going on externally. Earlier, we were talking about artificial intelligence, Chat GPT, of course, this hybrid situation. And I'm very glad that you're viewing it as an open thing. You're not, you're ready to shift if necessary,
yes,
rather than
yes.
some companies who are either rigidly hybrid or rigidly, back to work or something like that. It's difficult
Mhm.
because going into the future, you really don't know. You just have to be prepared to adapt as quickly as you can.
Yes, that's true. I think the what we really need to be in the at this times is to be flexible and adaptable, right? So if something changes again, if the business requires people to be in the office, then we should be flexible enough to adapt to that. But I was also thinking, Paul, that the younger generations, they're also used to working virtually. So now there are people who are promoting, if you're in social media, there are many younger people who's promoting virtual work as well. So virtual assistants, for example, virtual marketing or digital marketing executives. So I think that's also changing the way people are working, the way we engage people and the work status is also changing. So I'm also watching that trend.
The other day, I was having a conversation with he's not very visible in social media, but he's one of the movers for the freelancers. Okay, and he was explaining, you can actually do some pretty good stuff. Okay, and he
Yeah.
helped me figure it out. I said, wow. I said, and this is all just freelancing. I mean, me, look at
Mhm.
my age and go freelancing. What's that?
So it's the gig workers,
Well,
right? So in the future, there's going to be a lot of gig workers and freelancers that we can tap all over the world. So in fact,
yes.
for example, the other day I got an invitation to be interviewed for a certain research in the UK, and they're willing to pay for that. So I was kind of surprised that the research is now more global. For example, for organizations and people, because they're able to reach us remotely.
Definitely, that's definitely there, and I'm pretty sure they might be interested because you're going to this whole hybrid shift, and
Yeah.
you might have the data points that they're looking for, which is a definite plus. But still, for me, the challenge is, when you look at data, the way things are changing, that was yesterday.
That's true.
It's a good launching point, but it's still, hmm.
Yeah, like what happened recently, right? So ChatGPT was introduced, and then 2 months, it's growing so fast and rapidly. So we said, how can we keep up with this? How do we keep up with this?
It's when it comes to ChatGPT, I can definitely see the advantages. This is my own personal opinion, but again, I always have these images of it being abused some way.
Mm,
Okay, or
mm.
used for the wrong ends, if you want to say. But from a personal point of view, for me, uh, and this can happen to anyone. For me, it can make your brain lazy. Okay, because you stop doing the thinking. I'll just chat GPT do it, and then
That's true.
next thing I know, what did you say? Oh, our leaders need critical thinking. I said, I wonder why they forgot how to think critically.
That's right. This is just a side story. I was in a cafe the other day and I overheard someone in the other table who said, if there's Chat GPT when I was studying, when I was going through my master's, I could have graduated. He said,
Well, again, this is a generational thing. I mean, I was taught in school how to think. I learned the Socratic method. I learned all of that. Okay, so I understand allow the person to think, but if he doesn't have the discipline to think correctly, you're in trouble. It's-
that's true. So I'm also part of an alumni board, alumni association board, and I'm very active in terms of preparing the workforce for the future. So I would always encourage them to change the way we teach our students, because the way we teach our students is still memorization, etc. But so I encourage them to do critical thinking, problem solving, and all of that.
yeah, it's funny because especially critical thinking. I mean, I because I also do problem solving decision making based on Kepner-Trigo. If you're familiar with
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Kepner-Trigo, and that's
Yes.
really it really breaks it down, to the smallest detail. And it's a good critical thinking exercise, if you want to say. But typically, when the boss looks at it, he starts skipping, and I said, "Good luck." That's what I tell him.
Show me the result.
The process is designed. It's a solid process. If you want to skip around, I said, "Good luck." So, but critical thinking, Chat GPT. For me, Chat GPT, generally speaking, doesn't help somebody improve his critical thinking if he relies on it too much. Okay, and then of course is the insidious part of it, which is something that they've also stopped teaching, which is ethics. I say ethics, I go, knowing the difference between your rights and the right thing to do. And in fact, you see this in managers. Managers have rights, but are they doing the right thing? Do they choose to do the right thing, or do they choose to stick to their rights? That's an ethics situation, okay?
Yeah. So
Uh,
so going back to hybrid work, that's very important to us. So ensuring that the values are really foundational,
mhm.
because people are left on their own. So what they do, we don't see what they're doing physically. So they have to have these values and live up to this value so that we can trust them, right? And we can only see the outcomes that they provide. We don't see anymore how they did it.
Right,
But so the values has to be there. So we still continue with that, even if it's like old fashioned for the younger people. Yes, it's kind of traditional, but it's very, very important. As you said, ethics. So we still do that. In fact, we do that a lot more right
right,
now than before, because now the all our content on values and ethics are all available online, and they can access that on demand. So anytime they want to see it, we have a lot of examples. We have mentors who are available for them. They can talk to their leaders, and these values we continue to measure them in the that's included in the performance rating of each individual in the organization.
Actually, to support that, I'm glad that you mentioned that your president is very much he's an excellent, let's say, role model.
Mhm.
I want to say that definitely counts. But in my experience, and I don't know how this impacts remote working. I mean, if I were to ask you, if I were to, let's say, want to change the behavior of a group, I could focus on the leader, that would be top down, or I could focus on the group. What I mean by this is, and this is my impression, I think that people change quicker when the people around them change, not just the boss, the people around them. So if you get the group to do some kind of activity that's different or display some kind of behavior, but it's the people, not necessarily the boss. Okay, that's the way he'll learn how to pick it up. Okay, I mean, if that's true, and also if you agree with that, how does that work with this hybrid situation?
So in terms of that, I think transparency is very important. And in our current studies and what we're doing in the organization, data transparency, for example, in terms of how each of the departments are doing, that's shared across the group. So we have dashboards, so you can see which teams, for example, are highly engaged based
Mhm.
on the engagement surveys, which teams are performing well based on the KPIs. So there's indirect pressure, not competition, but you
Right,
actually see, oh, why am I not doing as well as this
right,
department, right? Or why are the attrition rate of this department is so low compared to mine? So I think data transparency would help in terms of that. I think that this group development is also very important. So seeing that not just from one person, which is the president, seeing that in Gallup there is a an engagement statement that says I like the people that I work with because they do quality work. So if you see that the other teams or other people in your team are is not doing quality work, it demotivates you. But if you see that everybody is trying to put in effort in terms of achieving their KPIs or their deliverables, it gives you more motivation.
absolutely. You can. That's a good way of putting it. Now, based on the data that you've seen so far, have you seen any anomalies? When I say anomalies, the guy gets his money target, but he's not doing too well in the other targets.
Yes. To be honest, yes, because
Right,
that's why in our organization we actually use the balance scorecard. So in the
right,
balance scorecard, there's a financial aspect, there's a process aspect, and the stakeholder aspect, and then also learning and growth or people aspect.
right,
So you'll see that sometimes their scores are pulled by just one factor, not all, but
okay,
ideally it should be more holistic, right? So
right,
the ideal team would reach their targets for each of these areas in the balance scorecard.
right, right. Did you see these situations happening? Before hybrid, during
Oh,
hybrid, after hybrid, or you just see them happen all the time anyway?
I think that's constant. That is still
Okay.
possible regardless of the work arrangement. I have not really done a study in terms of the impact of hybrid work. So
Right.
yeah.
No, because I have a friend. He left operations. He was in the gaming industry, and then he decided to go back. And I joked him. I said, "What? Did they pay a lot of money to shut up and keep your head down?" Yes. I was laughing because at least in my era, that happened quite frequently. Okay, fine, just give me the money and I'll just work. I don't care what the environment looks like. So,
Oh, I think that's
yeah.
it takes also a different kind of person to survive in a toxic environment.
Well, again, this has to do mainly because of maybe my generation.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence wasn't a thing in the 80s.
Yeah, because right now are the Gen Zs, the millennials,
Right,
they're very particular about purpose, and then
right,
also ensuring that there's well-being,
right.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are the things that also they are also looking for.
In general, I say that they're very interested in the quality of the work itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
maybe that's the way I describe the latest generation. I was in the generation I gotta put food on the table. Just give me work.
Yeah, I think it's also because there's more options probably for the new
It could be.
generation. There are a
Yes, it
lot
could.
of jobs that they can do. They can do remote work, virtual work, right? So different
And
kinds of jobs. They can even be influencers on social media.
of course. And in fact, also some companies have responded well, like yours, at least the way you describe it. They responded well. They do what they can to accommodate the newer generation or work with them, okay, because they realize that, hey, come on, it's a new generation. Let's do something different. If you want to say,
That's true. We looked at the demographics in our organization,
uh,
and in 7 years, my generation, Generation X, will be gone in the workplace.
right?
We're gone in the organization. So really, right now, 80% of our workforce are younger, millennials and Gen Zs.
I'm just curious because the millennials, when they were labeled millennials, this was maybe around 2012, 2013, 2014,
Yeah,
around
they're
there,
in their 40s right now,
right?
early
How
40s.
are they finding work as a manager? Because when they came in, they're complaining about the managers all the time. Now that they're the managers and they have to make the decisions that sometimes, admittedly, you make, but you're not comfortable making them. All right. How
I,
did,
I
go ahead.
I think they have experienced the same. They are experiencing the same thing. They know, they realize the challenges of being in the middle. So you get pulled
Yes,
from the top and from the bottom. So yeah. So I think they're realizing that now that it's not really easy. It's not an easy job. You really have to be skilled at it.
right.
Really, you have to get if you're having difficulties, you have to ask for help and get mentors and get trained and developed.
I think that how this whole hybrid thing just put in another, as they say, spanner in the gears in the works. Because for middle managers, it was already difficult to know when to lead, know when to manage. It depends on who you're talking to and all these things. And then they throw in the hybrid issue. Okay, so now it
Mm.
becomes a little trickier to figure out. Even if you know what to do, maybe you don't know how to do it. So one of the
Yeah, and
strangest
then
things. Go ahead. Yes.
and then there are so many things happening in the world like now, like disruptive technologies
Oh
here,
yes.
AI is here. So it's not just about leading people or managing people, but also dealing with all of these like uncertainties in the world and
Right.
in technology. How will this impact my jobs? As we were talking earlier, um people are asking about, will this tool replace me as a worker? What will I do next? So there are a lot of questions.
Definitely. And I'm sure they're asking the managers, and the managers, I know they want to answer, but I also know they don't have an answer.
That's true. There, it takes humility as well to say, I don't know yet. It's wait and see.
It's funny.
I'm learning while I'm doing. So
When I work with managers, I always tell them, if somebody asks you a question, always tell the truth. Oh, really, sir? Yeah. So if you can't tell them, you tell them, I can't tell you. If you don't know, I don't know.
I
That's
agree
the
with
truth,
that. I
right?
fully agree.
But this is a very fascinating conversation. Uh, we're in really interesting times, if you want to say, and everybody is facing a challenge. I can't say that there are any real experts out there, okay, because there's not enough data gathered yet. Okay, and companies haven't been in it long enough to figure out,
True.
maybe what the best path is. But at the end of the day, I think there'll be more diverse cultures, if you want to say, because each company will figure out how to work with the hybrid situation.
Mhm.
Okay, and it'll be all depending on what the company wants to do, its purpose, if you want to say, and how the environment they work in responds to them. But and they'll all be different. Okay, they're not. They won't be. They won't be similar, as similar as before the pandemic. But
And it's
Ruby,
actually more unpredictable.
yeah, unfortunately, it is. I wish it could be. Okay, when I was in sales, I told them every time you make a sales forecast, that's a guess. I don't care what you say. Any forecast is a guess, and it's the best guess you have, but it's still a guess. You have no idea what's happening or what's going to happen, but it's still a guess. And as long as you have the confidence that you can navigate it, which is what you need to build, you'll find a way to work. But Ruby, this has been a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed it a great deal. Is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers about maybe some events that you're hosting?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting conversation. For me, it's really to be in HR at this time is really very, very exciting. I am active on LinkedIn. So for the viewers who'd like to continue this conversation with me, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. What I can say about working at this time and maybe in the future, also in the future, is that we have to keep an open mind because there's so many changes happening, and the growth mindset has to be there. So every time something is changing, or even when you have some failures because we're not familiar with what's happening right now with all the changes, you just ask yourself, what am I learning from this situation or from this circumstances, and just keep on moving. Simon Sinek says it's an infinite game. I think it is an infinite game. So it just moves. You just grow and grow and grow as you experience the progress of the way we work, and as we move forward, the future, what we call the future of work.
I'll just interject a little bit here. The first interview that I did with as my host, I said when you look at leadership, it's not a matter of competencies because competence we know them. I said the challenge is capacity. I said, and you mentioned one of them. I mean, the leaders today, they have to be able to hold several ideas in their head, conflicting, and not feel like one of them has to be right. Is that something you can do? The other one is you have the capacity to think you're wrong. Okay, not admit. I said think you're wrong. So this capacity that I think the leaders have to develop because when you're in a situation that's very volatile, really VUCA, if you want to say, it is difficult. You really have to keep a very open mind and open view of everything.
That's
But
true.
Ruby, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful afternoon talking to you and to our viewers. And as always, learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas.